what the teachers' unions and frankly the Democratic Party, how they've handled public education has been, in my opinion, racist. Because these are primarily children of color and Hispanics. And there was a wonderful opinion piece by a woman who was Sapphira Shuttlesworth is her name. Her husband.
Folks, welcome inside the Parisi Palace, high above 2919 East Broadway. This is a special edition of the Jake Feinberg Show, coming to you live on Power Talk. Please go to our website, powertalk.live. Download our free app and stream all of our live local programming, including yours truly, the Jake Feinberg Show. And we are so happy that you can make us part of your day today because I get a chance to interview a guy who is totally predicated on spontaneous, improvisational, organic creation on the bandstand. He's lived many lifetimes and loves the timeless music of the world. He's a busy cat, but was finally able to catch up with him. Anders Osborne, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Right on. Thank you, Jake.
How you doing, my man?
I'm great. I'm having a day off. I'm at my house. So everything's pretty peachy.
I'm glad to hear that. I wanted to just start up. I just did an hour interview with Ken Kesey's oldest son, Zane Kesey, and I wasn't sure about if you got off on any of the beat writers or any of the Cuckoo's Nest stuff when you were just a cat coming of age.
I'm not sure if it was too much of it. My dad was really into a lot of it, and he would, give me a little bit of the, philosophical part of it more, like, getting into Castaneda and stuff like that. But I think outside that, I'm pretty unfamiliar with it. Why don't you turn me on to some stuff I should read?
Well, no, what's funny is that I'm not a prolific reader either, but because I'm a radio host, I bring these guys on to pontificate about this stuff. Free physical love to break away from the bands of the Victorian materialism lifestyle. Obviously, the difference between megadosing and microdosing, and I think the most important thing is just basically, separate from any type of substance. It's just basically having fun and and believing in magic. And I think I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about I'm not, just to answer your question, I can't hip you at any great writing, but I like to extract stuff from people. But can you talk about there's only two letters that separate music and magic, and you create so much melodic improvisation, as I call it, on the bandstand. Can you talk about your concept of magic and ultimately how that has transpired in your career? Does it happen? You're busy, you play a lot of shows, but that feeling of magic, because I look at music now sometimes. In a lot of ways, you go see a show, you pay a bunch of money, it's very formulaic, the audience sits there and watches somebody just riff, when in fact there's a spiritual quality to music that needs to always breathe. And I just wanted to talk to Anders Osborne about your concept of magic.
I don't know. I think I like to look for magic pretty much, all the time, maybe to a fault sometimes, There's a point when you play when there's a little bit of, well, not a little bit, there's actually there's a complete, loss of time and space. And it's not very often, I'm going to be honest with you. There's a lot of he's doing, she's doing, I'm responding, audience, level. You're crafting a lot of stuff. When you perform live, or I do, in the moment, there's almost athletic at the same time as it's like painting or, a little bit like when I write, but it's much more physical, like athletic in a sense. with you're manipulating sounds, but you got to manipulate emotions. And people talk about it being a conversation. I think it's way beyond a conversation. A conversation is a little bit like sparring. I know, you know, we agree. This, you know what I mean? That's like bum, bum, bum.
I dig.
But I do think that music, it goes a few levels deeper than that. It is basically more about tapping in, which means we're not really doing much, but we're using the tools we have. And I speak for me, obviously. I use what I have, my technical skills, my craftsmanship, my showmanship, and life experience to just find here and there through 2-3 hours moments when the whole room, everybody syncs up. And that's euphoric. I mean, that's truly like, it's really euphoric. And that can happen with any type of performance. You know what I mean? It can be a big Fish show. It can be a Springsteen show. It can be a small school choir. You know, it can be anywhere. Because they're just brief moments, pretty much like the rest of my life. Brief moments of, you know, blissful joy. And then the rest of it, you just hammering away.
I mean, listen, you just keep pounding the pavement. I just love going into this metaphysical. Do you believe, you know, I've talked to cats like Billy Cobb. I've done multiple interviews with him. You know, this guy never did any substances. Lenny White never did anything. And these guys talk about transcending their physical body on the bandstand and being able to see themselves on the side of the stage while they're actually playing. And you talk about these moments of bliss and when everybody syncs up. I mean, can you talk about a time when you left your physical body on the bandstand and actually was like witnessing yourself playing?
For me, I'm not sure if I see myself, if it's that metaphysical. I'm not quite sure. It's more that I become one with everything.
That's what I want you to get nail that down.
Yeah. So the feeling is more that it'll bring, like in the middle of a solo, and this can happen even, I'm getting emotional talking about it now a little bit. There's a sense of, it's like being tapped on the shoulder or touched by a higher consciousness or a God or the universe itself. Something just, it clues you in on something. It connects you with it. And tears will just start streaming down your face, or your knees will buckle and you'll fall down. And it's more, for me, it gets very physical. I can't quite control everything that happens. I almost have a hard time to play sometimes if it gets too strong. And so for me, it's more like that than me ascending and being above the scenario. I'm more being kind of submerged in what's happening. And I lose a little bit of my own control, which is what's so wonderful.
I mean, you got to kind of regain it, though, right? I mean, especially if you're playing in front of an audience. You just can't be on the floor. You got to get back up.
Yeah, but you have to give it up a little bit because it's part of, I think, what I've learned. That's why we're all there. We're all there, and you work, I think you work closer to a conduit, you know, when it's done the right way, than just being kind of a showman. Now, being a showman is, you know, clearly, stylistically, it doesn't matter. You know what I mean? If you're into dance music, it's the same process that a jazz musician's doing. I don't think there's any difference. For me, anyway. I've experienced a lot of beautiful things in all styles of, you know, performances. But I think the conduit part is we as musicians and the sound engineers, the lighting guys, and all the people that reach a certain level of craftsmanship and skills and experience, we become better at honing in how to transfer and transmit this stuff. So I think you need to lose yourself in it a little bit to give the rest of the audience and everybody else sort of a clear,
clairvoyance.
To let them see and experience that it is really happening.
Exactly.
I'm not just feeling it myself. I can see it even in the guy that just sang or played a solo. He's losing it. That's great.
Yeah.
Okay, it is happening. So you have to get in there and you have to let it go a little bit. Now, at a certain point, you got to get back up and hit the ball again. You know what I mean?
Right.
Somebody's got a bat. Jesus.
Yeah, you marinate too long, and then everybody starts to drift out. But I mean, then you bring it all back. I don't know that as a non-musician, I just think you nailed it. I mean, it's one reason I wanted to talk to you. It also, to me, you know, I talked to John Mayall yesterday, and I was a little bit disappointed because it was, to him, it was, of course, he is would be someone that would like to talk for 2 or 3 days about certain subjects and doesn't like to truncate them. But he essentially says, you know, like, listen, I have music in my head. I go get musicians who I believe can play the accompanist role, and we make the music together. So, I mean, when you're talking about guys kind of losing it and going off, and that's a good thing, and everybody's syncing up, I mean, it is about putting people around you that also get that, you know. And one guy that I've noticed who's been on the bandstand with you recently is Tony Leone, the drummer. And I wanted you to talk.
Yeah.
I wanted you to talk about why you like playing with Tony, and specifically the idea of. And I've been very obsessed with this. Again, somehow it all veers into theory, even though I'm not a musician. Is the idea of, like, with Leone, like when you guys are playing, I would like to get your concept of that any note can be the one. You know, that if you lose yourself within the music, any note, it'll always come back around. And I wonder about how you and Leone communicate on the bandstand, especially if you get lost in one of those transcendent moments. If you could talk about that.
I think it varies. I don't think there's one technique to it, but I think, like, Tony, for instance, he's got a style that is it's a very fluid. It's not a boom cha, you know, it's not always the 2/4 and the snare. It's like he's really, really good at being spiritual, at being, like you said, to eliminate the ones. Now, Phil Lesh is somebody that preaches that very, very adamantly, that he does not want the backbeat. He wants all that to go away, so that it's basically a linear. It's even past a classical composition where it's long forms. Miles used to write these long forms as well. A lot of Middle Eastern music. But if you do that on drums, a lot of us rock players, and, you know, what I grew up on, which is, you know, the 4, you land and you're in. Tony it's like a guy that can play like Levon Helm, but then he'll go into the space where now it's dissipated. So it becomes more weightless, and you're floating a little bit more. So in order to get back, you kind of almost, if you play a lot together, it'll start to happen instinctively. We did a 1.5 years together before he joined the Robinsons Brotherhood. And then in the end, it started to get to that point where he knew where I wanted the backbeat, and he knew where he wanted it to open up. And then, so we start reading each other. If you don't have that, you might have to do a little body language, a little look. You don't have to make a big deal out of it. If I'm lost, if I'm completely lost, I'll just turn around and say, where's the damn one? I need the one right now, Tony.
Right. Give me the one, man. Give me the one.
Yeah. Can I get the one, please?
You know, but it's interesting. I mean, I think what you talk about with Lesh, because I heard that about Kreutzmann. Of course, they were the rhythm section together. You think Lesh was the one that because they don't want anything. They just want just continued melodic music going on, and if it doesn't, if it's, I guess here's the point, is that you guys, you know, you being younger than the Dead, it's like if you don't do that right, it is a mess. It can be a mess. I mean, to make it sound good is super important, and I can't. For me, it's like, you know, do you try to, as a mentor, or do you have opportunities to work with cats that are more confined to the four on the floor kind of thing, with the way you were raised? Everyone is predicated, where's the one? Where's the one? Where's the one? I mean, James Jamerson used to yell at people and say, here's the one. Any note can be the one. You know, to me, it's like
exactly.
this, you know, and do you get a chance? I just think it's, for my daughters, future generations, it's just so important. You're continuing this lineage of melodic improvisation. Because like you said, Leone can play the dirt farmer, and then he can go into, you know, into the floating state. You know, do you have a chance to work with younger cats and mentor them on these kinds of concepts?
If I do, if I have the
I mean, aside from your gigs, I mean, if you're playing with young, how do you mentor kids to because it's a kind of, it's a feeling thing. You have to, you know, obviously it takes a rapport, but you know, do you get chances to even, like, you know, work with younger kids on that?
Yeah, I think the way it can happen is in small increments.
Right.
I don't go out and then specifically mentor and teach, but it would be if I sit in with somebody, or I did a session yesterday, and these guys are like, yeah, we want you to play slide. I want you to come in, and it's a, you know, kind of a little bit of an updated 145 bluesy rock, very standard. And I go in, they have some kicks to it. So my approach would be to serve the song. Obviously, what does the song need, and what does the track need, and the sound. If these guys are in this register, maybe I should like be more in this register, and I should. But I explained, so my mentorship would come in there. They're a little younger, and I would say, why don't check this out? What if I play like this? So that would be a way to show these people, and it's not so much that we improv, but I played the complete opposite of what they asked me to do. But they got very excited and said, wow,
right.
I had never thought of that. And that's what I was taught by people that mentor me, is when I see them play. Like I did a session, and it's kind of the same, but it's very backbeat, 4/4 soul music style. I did a session with Johnny Lang a long time ago, and Steve Cropper was on the session.
Sure.
And we were, getting ready to do something, and I was a little nervous and intimidated. I was like, oh my God, I'm in my early 20s. And I'm sitting here with Steve Cropper. What the heck am I going to play? And so I said, well, geez, what the heck am I going to play? You're here. And he goes, all the spaces where I'm not playing? Yeah, you can play there.
Right in there. Right, just tuck yourself right in there, man.
Yeah, just fine. So basically he told me, just listen. You know what I mean? Just listen. And you'll find your little spot. So I think sometimes you don't have to say much. You just kind of just play in a certain way, and it'll start to stick, I think.
Right.
Well, because that's what happened to me. People would do certain things, and I go, geez, and that's amazing. I would never have thought of that. I got to try that next time. So,
talking to Anders Osborne here on the Jake Feinberg Show, having a ball. I've talked to Ahmad Jamal this year and Randy Weston, some of the African jazzers, and I always talk to them about it's fascinating for me because a lot of them did not go to South Africa for a long time because of apartheid to perform. They wouldn't go there. I'm doing a movie documentary on Stan Getz, and he actually went there with the promise that he would play for a desegregated audience, and it didn't happen, so he wound up going to some local gym and blowing the doors off the place. But I guess my point is that what I'm fascinated with, we have a deluge and just a saturation of material now at our fingertips, on the internet. You were a teenager, and you saw it, and you were seeking, and what you decided to do was go to the motherland. I mean, you went to North Africa and the Middle East. And that music there is timeless, and I just think I want you to talk there. It's the time. Charles Lloyd said it. The India, the timeless music of India, and the polyrhythms, and I'm just thinking to myself, Anders decided to hitchhike and play music in the motherland of, and I wanted you to talk about how your ears grew and really what help what you learned from that whole experience of seeking? Because in today's world, you don't have to seek very much. You can just tap. There's just so much available to you, and yet you hit the road, and you didn't hitchhike in the state. I mean, you didn't. You went to Africa. That's the motherland there. So, I mean, can you just talk about the transcendent experience there?
Yeah, I think I mean, a lot of things happen in the early years of immature adulthood, but that changed me and affected me. At the time, I wasn't quite aware of what one thing or the other was going to, how it was going to affect me. But I can look back and I can see that one of the main things that I experienced for a long time was not being exposed to too much popular music right off the bat. In my late teens, traveling like that, I was exposed to everyday, not just folk music that you go, you buy an LP and you go home and it's like, okay, now I'm studying Appalachian stuff, or now I'm doing African drumming.
Right,
not like that.
Yeah.
You're in it, and there's a blind guy that's playing in 17. That's the meter. He's playing with one tambourine, singing on the streets of Luxor, and I'm like, what is? And I stood there for a long time counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 14, 15, 16, 17. 1, 2, 3. I'm like, he's playing in 17. That's insane. Well, the reason was that's the tradition. So that's just what he did, and he did that for money. And then there'll be somebody in a bar that played James Taylor tunes and, Carla Bonhoff songs that were popular in the 70s or something. And they did the same thing, not popular music. We're just entertaining to get some money while we were drinking beer or having a salad or something. So when that was my everyday experience of music and street musicians in Athens, or, I played in this desert, tiny little bar out in Beersheba, outside Beersheba in Israel, and that's the music I listened to. So what happened was, the point I'm trying to get to with all this talk, I think I didn't see music as a career move. I didn't see music as other people's career move. I didn't see it as something that this is how you become rich and famous. I saw it as something that this is part of everyday society. This is buying groceries, playing or listening to music, having music when you eat, making a few dollars so I can eat by playing on the streets. Does it make sense what I'm saying? It's just
you're doing. I mean, no. I just want you to keep you're riffing like. I mean, yeah. It's called culture. The culture was in your face.
Line.
Yeah, right.
Yes, and it varied. So all these different styles. In the morning, I remember that too. In Aswan, in the morning there were these these prayers would go on at 4 a.m. The Muslims start like, hi, 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 and they go on, and it's like full blast all over. Ugh. And I turn on the radio, and I'm hearing, but to me, sound like, well, this is the same. No, it wasn't. This was like, Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan style, Pakistani, just wailing Middle Eastern blues. And then they would stop, just like, Buddy Guy would stop in the middle of the show, and the audience would go crazy on the radio. And it'd be like 10,000 people there screaming over this guy, just how he's ripping on these folk songs. And I was like, this is insane. The prayer and the singing sounds the same. I think I know what's up.
Did you? I mean, this is so. But I want to be clear about something, because when you decided to do this, like, you just made it very clear. It was you were seeking authenticity and heritage. It was not about trying to build on your career or get an edge or anything like that. So you knew going into this trip that you just wanted to marinate in these different cultural, because the music is their culture it's right out there. I mean, that it wasn't like you were going there to like see historical sites. I mean, this was something that you knew in your mind at that age that you wanted to do.
I wanted to go there, but I don't even think the music was, the actual instigator of any of this. I think it was just, I have always played. I always played a little organ. We had a pump organ, or my dad had some drums, and I had a guitar, and so I was just playing. But because I am who I am, and because I was looking for me, I was looking for who I am, I was looking for my place in the world, I was looking for the world, I was looking for anything different than where I grew up, because that was not good. I didn't like where that was. I didn't like what that was. I didn't like how people talked to me, acted to each other. It just seemed not right. So I'm like, well, there's got to be something different out there. And
I see.
During that journey, the number one thing that sticks with me were a couple of personal interactions between either a lover, a new friend, a cab ride where the driver's explaining something that just happened to him, and then on top of all of that, all the music. Everywhere was music. Every single place, every town, every village, Mexico, Central America, wherever I've gone, Thailand, it's always music. It just keeps coming back, and I keep going to it, and I keep being in it, and I keep playing on something. And I met this girl from South Yemen, and we had a crush on each other, but she was Orthodox, just very conservative Jewish family that had migrated to Israel. And I was not Jewish, so I wasn't allowed to speak to her, so there was this separation. But it was still cool enough that her parents would walk her to the little place where I stayed, and she would sit outside my little room that I rented while I played, and she played bongos outside. We didn't say a word. We weren't allowed to talk, but we were allowed to play together.
This is,
while they watched it.
Oh man, this is why I do my show. This is exactly why I do. This is awesome stuff because
it's amazing stuff, right?
Well, it's just you know what it is. It's real, and it's it's you have a crush on somebody, you can't talk to them because of the Orthodox component to it, and yet she's playing bongos. That's just awesome. Yeah, I was thinking about in terms of do you believe that? Were you putting yourself? Obviously you're going out, you're going to have a bite to eat, you're going to catch some Carla Bonfa tunes or that kind of but I'm saying when did you feel comfortable enough I guess in North Africa you went to Ethiopia or Egypt. Where did you go in North Africa?
Somalia. That's as far as I went. Yeah.
So at what point in what kind of instruments did you bring, and how quickly did you just put yourself into the actual application of playing with cats that were open to you playing, especially in the 6/8 time, in the odd meters? I'm so obsessed with this kind of stuff, and I'm wondering if I don't believe you had a lot of exposure to that prior to, but maybe you did. But how quickly did you throw yourself into that?
Yeah, I did not. I had, I grew up on a lot of the Blue Note era jazz and stuff like that, so I was familiar with and classical music.
Sure.
So the idea of everything or anything that should be included if it's necessary or if it seems appropriate, that was okay. Now, I had no skills for it, and I don't think I genuinely threw myself into anything. I just had my acoustic guitar as an old Sigma, like a Martin copy from Japan that I bought back in the 70s, and that's all I had. And I would just join in when I was allowed to, or play with somebody like the guy that played on the streets. I would sit with him and try to follow, but I didn't stand a chance. There was no way I could play in 17. I'm like, I don't know what the melody is. I don't know what's going on.
Right.
But nobody really cares. It's just, we're just, we're a bunch of, floating spirits. We're traveling around here, and we're trying to figure out, should I be the guy that has this one job and this family and live here my whole life, or should I be the person that's all over the world, or should I? We're all just trying to figure out which part am I going to play. And I think I was in a period of my life where I really was just trying to find out, okay, which part do I want to play? I'm not sure where I want to be and who I want to be and what I'm supposed to do. So, again, wasn't looking for anything in particular, just doing my best to, kind of find out who I should be.
No, I did. I dig absolutely completely. I wonder about, I would like you to talk. You make your livelihood pretty prolifically as a live performer. You cut some albums as well. Could you just talk to the audience worldwide right now on Power Talk, just in your mind, about the health of the touring circuit in the United States specifically? Because I've interviewed 500 cats and guys that, there was a period of time you had. I don't need to tell you this, but you had big band, Duke Ellington big bands going across the country. Art Blakey going across the country. You had, studio scenes in L.A., in San Francisco, New York. The Chitlin circuits. People were thriving. Playing strip clubs didn't matter. It was just the touring circuit was on fire, and you had Steve Gadd talking about being in an organ trio and they're throwing everything into the back of a Hearst, driving it around, and now it's like, well, you're catered, and rightfully so. The musicians, hopefully you have roadies and you got good hotel accommodations and they put some meals in your belly. But as you look at it from a global, as you search for yourself continually, as we all do, what is the health of the touring circuit in this country now?
What is the what?
What is the health of the live music touring circuit in the United States, or and just in general?
Well, I'm not sure how in tune I am with the whole scene. I think there's a lot of people that are really qualified to see it, but my experience is I think live is doing a little better than it did a few years back. Now, it goes in cycles. The past 30 years I've been doing this. It's kind of like, it goes up and down.
Mm-hmm.
Like the whole early 90s, late 80s, but early 90s when Blues Traveler and myself and Dave Matthews, Joan Osborne, Rusted Root, the whole Wetlands kind of, all of us around this time. There was a bunch of bands. That was the first that I remember real upswing, where I didn't have to be like somebody else. Before that, you had to do like a bluesy record that was kind of like Stevie Ray Vaughan or Bonnie Raitt at Nick of Time, or, you had to be something. Around the 90s, I think it started to be, we just want some cool new live stuff. People that may not even have good songs, but they can jam. So I think where we are today, we are a little bit in, kind of still in, only the really same old bands, same old light shows, same old who's successful are still the biggest successful ones, unless they have a hit record or a hit song, like something that can make its way in there. Now, I do think that the live music, the actual kids that come out, they're amazing. I think it's a staggering amount of, high quality, cool stuff coming out. I'm not aware of all of it. I'm not too familiar. I just listen to what my 16-year-old daughter listens to, and it's pretty amazing. It's like new music every day that I've never heard of.
Right. No, but there's a supply and demand
right?
issue. Well, I agree with you completely, because it's just, to me, it's like I wonder about if you can look back from that early 90s period. Even I was at Boston University in the late 90s during that sort of Medeski, Martin Woods, soul jazz, psychedelic resurgence. And I just wonder if you think that if there's a supply, not necessarily in New Orleans, New Orleans is an outlier, but I wonder about the supply and demand issue of so many capable cats, not enough places to play.
Yeah, I think you're right. And that's, I think, what I was hinting towards. The same old people, and this is not I'm not criticizing. I'm just saying,
sure,
the safe ticket, the safe bet, the fish or whatever it is. These people we're still going to see Rolling Stones. That to me is almost bizarre.
It's bizarre, man. It's freaking bizarre.
Yeah, it's like the Clintons and the Bushes in the politics. It's the same. Like, dude, step down. Just let it be and let some of these kids take over. There's some people that need that room.
Well, no, you're so, you bring up, and this is a more socio-political thing too, but I totally believe the food fight that's going on at our political level. has everything to do with the fact that the older crew, it's like the party's over for them, but they don't want to leave.
Yeah.
They're like the drunk morons that are just causing, it's, it's like, and again, part of it is also transcendent younger cats who come along and inspire, and actually you don't even have to force them off the stage. They do know it's time to leave. But that's part of the issue in music as well, man. I mean, and to me, it's like we're living through that. You being somebody who's really established yourself, and I think it's vital for you to just continue to be that link in the chain. Mainly because it's just I just want, my show is about inspiration, and I just I think it's important to continue to inspire cats. Before I let you go, I want to read something to you. The only clue I'm going to give you is that it's a guitar player. That is a quote that I took from him. So he plays guitar. He said, "There was literally not a word between me and Anders before we played. I met him 15 minutes before the gig. He looked at me before we started the first song and just uttered G. That was the key of the first tune. That was about it. That was about more like 6 years ago. I've done gigs with him all over the country. We don't talk about what's going to happen, who's going to take what solo. You can't do that, really, because then it becomes this forced thing in this box. We talked about that this is going to happen in this order. That's not really respecting the moment. Maybe he's feeling it here. Maybe I'm feeling it over here. It takes a very specific kind of understanding and communication, looks and nods. You're like the first or third base coach signaling. Who is that person?" I know you can say I don't know.
Luther Dickinson.
Scott Metzger.
Scott Metzger, I love it. Is it really? Oh my God!
I interviewed him last week, and he riffed on that. Dude, I've been transcribed. I have tons of stuff on Anders Osborne. I'll get it to you. But before we end here, I want you to talk about. We talked about Miles, the Blue Note stuff. We actually need to probably vet that some more. But it's like nonverbal communication on the bandstand. Anders Osborne, break it down, because to me it's like I part of my show is about leadership, and we live in a very verbal society. People hang on words all the time. I'd just like you to riff on what Metzger just talked about and your philosophy as it relates to nonverbal leadership on the bandstand.
So I think, first of all, very flattering, even though it was not really meant to maybe be good or bad. It was just a statement about our relationship.
He's like G. He's G. You said G. That's the key of the song.
Yeah. I think for me, it's when I'm on stage, because there's something about each person. So if I see somebody that turns away from the audience a little bit, and they stay back, and they do something in a certain way, then my job is to understand. It really is. It's the big part of what I have to learn to do. That moment is to understand where they're coming from. What's happening? Are they going through a divorce? Did somebody just die? Are they shy by nature? I thought I knew this cat. Blah, blah. There's all these things. Now, I don't sit down scientifically and think all this very cerebrally.
Sure.
But over the years, you very quickly have to make a summation, and you've got to go, okay. So then you got to find your role from that to the guy that's too far up front, that sings too loudly into the mic, every backup part, blah, blah, blah. So there's all these things. The drummer that is a little bit behind on a certain type of groove every time. All these things are going to happen with every single player you're with. There's going to be a dynamic. And then there's the stuff they thought they knew about me, but tonight I'm different. I'm filled with anxiety, so I am rushing things. I don't finish my sentences, all these things, right?
I dig.
So my job as the leader is to now, okay, let's delegate. Let's put the energy. Let me see if I can get this guy to be, so if the shy guy over there that seems introverted goes with the guy that sings too loud, let me see if I can pair these two up. So I walk over. So you do physical stuff. You drive really hard this one groove. You turn up a little bit. not to be louder, but to be stronger, like a jet engine, and just, okay, we're going here. And then you let go here, and then they fly off. And all of a sudden, this change. So you manipulate basically the energy and the vibrations on stage. And then all of a sudden, when it starts to come together, you can feel them manipulating you. And now I go, yes, now I'm being forced as well. Somebody's doing things with me. Now we're communicating. Does it make sense?
Oh, I mean, it's going in the book, man. It's just this is poetry, man. I didn't realize you were a writer. You write a lot too?
Yeah, I write every day.
Well, maybe we'll save that for part two, Anders. I really I've been woodshedding for a long time. I'm on the bandstand now. It's been 5 years now. I'd love you to get one of your iterations, one of your bands, and come to Tucson at some point. I'd love to meet you in person because we always get neglected. We're not on Route 66, but we need you out here. We need you out here.
I'm going to make that happen. You have my word on that.
Love you, brother. And I
love you too.
All right, man. We'll sync up soon. Bless you and keep swinging, brother.
I will.
All right,
Take care, Jake.
Take care, Anders. Bye-bye. That was a heavy day on the Jake Feinberg Show. We heard from Zane Kesey, the oldest son of the father of Ken Kesey, the legendary Merry Prankster. And then we just heard from a great improviser on the bandstand, guitarist, Anders Osborne, and it was a seminal moment. We continue on here. The Jake Feinberg Show will be back tomorrow with Peter Rowan, and then on Saturday with John Perry Barlow. In the meantime, we will rejoin the Jim Parisi Show.
Not that much more these days, but anyway, it was.